Brandee, I welcome you to our Scottsdale meeting. So excited to have you here. And we're really looking forward to hearing your story. And we thank you so much. I pass to you.
Thanks, Nancy. My name's Brandee. I'm a recovered compulsive overeater food addict. Thank you for asking me to come and do this, Nancy. I just want to show, I'm going to show just one picture just so you can get an idea, but I don't think I, need to share any more than that. I'm going to share my screen here with y'all. So this is, can you see the picture? Okay, so this is how happy I was. It's funny because whenever I look at this photo, I'm like, wow, you were super happy. So I was at the LA birthday party, and this was going to be my time. This was going to be the time where I finally got it. And I didn't. But I needed to take before pictures, right? Like, so that was my thing, is I needed to take the before pictures so that, I had them to look at and compare as I started losing weight, and because it was really all about the weight for me a lot of the time. So I have several of those pictures. I'm going to stop sharing here if I can figure out how to do that. Shit. Can somebody take me off the sharing? I'm not very computer good. Can anyone take me off? Oh, can somebody take me off?
I'm not sure how to take it from somebody else, but usually if you close the window, Susan?
You can do it if you're a host. You should
there, I got it. Okay. I got it. Screen has stopped sharing. Okay, sorry. Obviously I need a Zoom 101 apparently. So yeah, that was one of my times, one of my many times that I was gonna get this thing. And if you can hear what I'm saying, I was gonna do this. I was gonna lose weight because that was my biggest priority, was I just needed to get this weight off. And so I came into program when I was 16 years old, and today I'm 43. I just turned 43. So I've been in the rooms a long time of Overeaters Anonymous. And, I've met some really fantastic people in these rooms. And, there was times in my life where I really needed these people. And I had a lot of moms. I had a lot of friends. And, everyone was so good to me. And I was never able, though, to recover from this disease. I lost a little weight. I think actually that's not true. When I first came in the program, I lost like 100 pounds and quickly relapsed because I was dieting with support. So for me, I will be forever grateful to be a part of Overeaters Anonymous for the last 26 years because I had a better life because of it. Not that I had, not that I was thin or that I was in recovery, but like when they say you don't forget what they teach you in these rooms, it's, it's true. So I did have a general better life. However, they say, this disease progresses over time. And that's what happened to me, is that even in these rooms, I was around some really well-meaning people, but some of the direction and some of the sponsorship and stuff that I got was killing me. It wasn't, like where it's okay to eat maybe half of a chocolate or half of a chocolate bar, like those kind of messages for me were killing me. But I was going to try so hard because my disease is going to try and find every loophole. So if I have a sponsor that's telling me, well, it's okay if you just have a little bit. Well, of course, I'm going to take that sponsor. I would search the sponsor out that would give me the easier, softer way, because my disease, that's how my disease shows up. So, I grew up in these rooms. I feel like I grew up in these rooms. I mean, I was always an overweight kid. And, you know, I experienced some not nice people in my childhood that, you know, obviously would be very mean to me when I would show up and be sitting around the food tables. I was constantly told, like, get away, you're like, that's all you do is eat. And, you know, and I always wondered, like, what was wrong with me. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Like, why was it that I was the one sitting at the food tables just shoveling in the food and the other kids would be playing? But I would need to sit, you know, I'd keep going back. My mom would say, go play. And I would go play for like a little bit, but I would be pulled back to that table. And it was like, I mean, today I know why, because I was so powerless over that, right? Like, my disease had me in those moments. And so, but I grew up thinking something was wrong with me, that I just wasn't like other kids, you know. And of course, like in when I grew up, like, being overweight, you had to shop at old lady stores. And, you know, that wasn't pretty. That wasn't sexy. Like, I was wearing grandma clothes in junior high and high school because that's, you know, I was almost 300 pounds when I was in grade 10. And, you know, my life was so limited being in an overweight body, as well as just my mind. You know, my mind was crazy when it came to food. And my disease really took off when I got my driver's license and I had freedom and I could go anywhere I wanted and do anything I wanted. And so those drive-throughs, I hit them constantly. Like, you know, I had spent all my money on the food. And, you know, in between that time, I'm looking at for like things that I can try to make me stop. And I never found anything that could permanently make me stop. You know, I tried, like, my willpower. Oh, if you'd only have enough willpower, then you could stop. Yeah, you just don't have enough willpower. Fuck that. I have willpower. And it didn't work with the food because I'm powerless. So, you know, resolutions, the New Year's resolutions, every, you know, New Year, it was always like, okay, I'm going to work out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat this. And, you know, again, it didn't work. It might have kept me, like, you know, good for a little bit, but nothing that gave me permanent recovery. And, you know, I tried the 90 meetings in 90 days. And, you know, meetings don't keep me well. That's not what keeps me well. It's great. It's an added, I mean, I love coming to them, but this is not where I get my abstinence and my, you know, my way of life. This, you know, I hear other people talk about it and it's great, but, you know, it's just the 90 meetings in 90 days didn't work for me either, because that's using a tool for the solution, and the tools are not our solution. But I used those for a lot of years and I always came up short. I always ended up back in the food. You know, I get little periods of time and then I would just be back in the food. And, you know, I mean, obviously I tried every single diet because I was young when I was going through this. Like, I'm sure my mom spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my diets, because her main goal too was that I needed to lose the weight. If I had, you know, $1 for every time I heard somebody say to me, if you would just lose the weight, you wouldn't have these problems, you know, and I believed that. And I believed that for a long time. You know, I thought that my life would be perfect if I could just get down to that right body size. And, you know, I know today that has nothing to do with it. Does it feel good? Yes, but it has nothing to do with it. You know, my happiness is not about my body size. My, you know, relationships in my life are not about my body size. My, you know, work relationships, anything, that's not about my body size. It's about my head. And this program teaches me how to live life, because I didn't know how to before. I had no idea that the way that I was proceeding in my life was actually not what I needed to do to be well. You know, I guess I don't want to say alcoholic, but my, you know, food life, my food obsession life was the only normal one I knew. And, you know, it talks about I was restless, irritable, discontent, unless I could again have that sense of ease and comfort, which food brought to me. Food calmed me down. Food made me feel better, you know. And so when I put down the food, then I had all these feelings. And of course I was going to eat again if I wasn't working the program of recovery. I was totally going to eat again. There was no, but it took me so many years to make that connection. And I think, I hit a bottom. I'll be entirely abstinent almost 2 years. It will be 2 years on September 12th by the grace of God. And, the last relapse before that, there was a lot of loss in my life. And I gained like 50 pounds in like 6 months. My mom got sick with pancreatic cancer. And it was like my worst nightmare. My mom was like my bestest friend in the whole world. Like I loved her. I love her. But she was also my biggest enabler. And I wouldn't be able to say this today if I hadn't worked through the steps and got some outside help. My mom, she just did her best, but in the meantime, at my expense a bit. And so I went through like her diagnosis with her, and she got very, very sick. And all I wanted to do was be there for my mom. And all I could do was put my face in the cookie jar and my hand in the cookie jar and, ordering out food and DoorDash and all those things. It's all I could do. I couldn't handle the way I was feeling. The pain and the agony that I was feeling was so intense that I just ate the whole time. But all I wanted to do was be there for my mom. And that's when I started to see in my life that maybe this food thing is a bit more. Maybe this is a problem. Like, here, my mom, who I love, I'm not able to show up for. I'm not able to, be present and help her in her sickness without running to the grocery store and eating my way through it. And that was like the first time in all of my recovery where I could put a connection to something, to something was happening, and it was progressively getting worse. I would leave my office when my mom was sick. I would leave my office after work, after like eating all day long. Like I knew everybody in my office that had any kind of food. And so I would go to all their offices and eat their food. And I would leave and just so sick. And I wasn't functioning at work. I was not a good employee or a good boss. I was so taken away by the food. I was drunk on food the whole time. And I remember I would go in the park where I would park, there would be a place. I would go pick up like some squares there, take them to my car, eat them while I'm driving. Then I would stop on the way home at Dairy Queen and grab a bunch of food and be eating it in my car. And then I would stop again because I live in a hamlet outside of my city. I would stop again at the Tim Hortons and get a ton of food and eat the rest of the way home. I would come home, flap my ass on the couch. I have 2 children and a husband that need me, and I wouldn't give a shit. I just would sit on the couch and they could fend for themselves. And meanwhile, they're losing their grandma, who is so important to them. But I couldn't stop. Like I've never felt so powerless in my life. And, I ended up calling somebody, I've reached out to a lot of people in a way and said, like, I need help. I can't do this anymore. Can you help me? People would work with me and I would just end up picking up and eating again. People would say, you just got to put down the food, Brandee. You just got to put down the food. 3 days and then we'll work the steps. I couldn't get 3 days. I just couldn't. I tried. And, people would say, well, you're not desperate enough. Well, I was desperate and I knew I was dying. I just couldn't do this on my own. And so I ended up seeking some outside help. And my mom said to me, she said, Brandee, you're not going to continue to eat like this until you go, are you? And I'm like, no, Mom, I'm going to stop. I promise you I'll stop. I didn't stop. I couldn't. And so I ended up going, so my mom ended up dying it was just on August 27th, her 2-year anniversary was just on August 27th. And it was really hard. And I just kept eating until I ended up going to treatment. And, that's part of my story. Not everyone has to have that, but that's my story. That's where I needed to go. And even when I was on the plane on the way there, I was like, what are you doing? This is just another thing that you're trying to do to control this disease, or another thing you're doing, and I just felt like I was wasting my time, but I didn't know what else to do, because I knew that and I had enough exposure to Vision for You, to Harlan, to all of the good speakers to know that it was door number 1 or door number 2. I was going to continue on the path that I was going and killing myself, or I was going to accept, help and spiritual help and forget everything I think I knew, because I had a lot of preconceived notions when I was, walking through these doors constantly. I thought I knew everything. And I had to say that set aside prayer on a daily basis. I had to, because I don't know. My thinking got me to 350 pounds, using outside issues to abstain from eating, in a crazy, sad marriage, no relationship with my kids. I'm a manager of employees that I'm not even present for. That's where my best thinking got me. That's where my brain gets me. And so I had to think that maybe Brandee doesn't have the answers, and maybe somebody else does, and maybe I need to just shut my mouth and listen. And instead of being a yeah but person, maybe a yes ma'am. Because and I had to start doing things I didn't want to do. I didn't, they told me, oh, you need to weigh and measure your food. You need to eat this, how much vegetables, you need to do this. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do any of those things. And then I go back to, well, do you want to continue to die? Because I knew I needed to put down the food in order to work these steps. That was very clear by the people who went before me. And so, I just did it. I did it one day at a time. And I may have not loved it every day. I may have hated it every day. And the first 30 to 60 days were hell. And anyone that tells you that it's not hard to put down the food, they're lying to you. It's hard, but it's not impossible. I used to think I was terminally unique and that I was never going to get this. I spent 26 years in the room not getting it. And, I always say to people, don't give up, because if I would have just said, you know what, I did think that maybe I was just meant to be fat and miserable and maybe alone, but I didn't, part of me didn't accept that. I think that piece of God in me did not accept that. And I knew that there was a better way, because I seen people living that way. And so, over the last 2 years, I can tell you, I'm an amazing boss. I'm an amazing mother. I am a decent wife. Although that's my husband is my biggest teacher for sure. But I didn't do those things. I had to get out of the way and let God run the show. And so, when I came home from treatment, I knew I needed to work these steps, and I needed to do them quickly, and I needed to start sponsoring and helping other people, because that's what the steps tell me to do. And so I came home, I worked through the steps, I did amends that I never wanted to do, things that I had been carrying for years, I finally put on the table, because I couldn't not this time. It was, I was very clear that I was either going to live or I was going to die. And, in the last 2 years, I've let go of a lot of weight, over, I think it's 130 pounds. But that's just a gift. The weight is just a gift. What I really want to share with you is just the happiness I have in my life today. and the contentment. I don't live in fear anymore because I have a higher power that's going to take my fears when I let it go. I don't live in resentment because I can't. The big book tells me resentment is the number one offender. So no matter what, I have to work through that and I have to let it go. And sometimes it's a process, and I'm willing to do that today. And I also see how living that way, that like there's so much benefit in life to living without resentment. I never have something. Thank you. I never have something in the pit of my stomach anymore. I used to walk around with, a pit in my stomach constantly, full of fear, full of sadness, full of anger. Today I rarely have that because I have a program that shows me how to deal with this stuff. And I mean, you'll hear Harlan constantly say, you know what, when you're abstinent, you feel everything better. He's right. But we also have steps in order to help us deal with our feelings. And for me, I have other tools that I use to deal with my feelings as well, and that work. And, I'm very much centered in a lot on step 6 and 7. Those character defects are why I ate. How I showed up in the world was in those character defects constantly. Today, I pray to God, to replace my selfishness with unselfishness. And when I'm struggling in certain relationships, I need to take action. So, if I'm struggling with my husband, I need to not look at his behavior, but I need to look at my own. How am I showing up in that relationship? What actions am I going to do each day to be more loving, to be more kind, to be unselfish? I can ask God, I can say to God, God, I just want to be unselfish today. Thanks. And walk away and do nothing. Well, God's not just going to remove them. I have to take the next right action, always be moving, building that muscle. And am I always perfect at it? No. But I do my best to just be aware and be open to what God would have me be. I work with a lot of people in this program. And, as much as I love them, I do that to save my own ass because I have to. And, I make it really clear to people that I work with, they're going to be sponsors at the end of the 12 steps because we have to give this away. We can't keep something we don't give away. And, I sat in these rooms and I wasn't sponsoring for 25 years, 26 years, because I didn't want to. I wanted OA to just be something I did. Today, something OA is I live this program one day at a time. And, people will often say to me, what was it? What was it this time? I don't know. I do believe that my mom's death had a lot to do with me just seeing the seriousness of this illness. And I don't joke around about this illness anymore. Of course I'm going to laugh and, we're not a glum lot, but this is a serious disease and it's killing people. And it was killing me. I didn't just have a little food problem, which I would love, people would convince me of that before. Everyone outside would say, it's just food. Yeah, food that was killing me. And so today, my alcoholic foods are down, which, a lot of people will call me and say, well, I don't really think I need to do this and I don't think I need to do that. And that's fine. But how free do you want to be? That's what I kept asking myself, how free do I want to be? I sat there and said I was abstinent for years. I've never been abstinent because I was never honest. I was doing the 3 meals a day, nothing in between, because that's what I heard you do here. Yeah, 3 meals a day, nothing in between with chocolate bars in my dinner. That's what I would do. And during that time, I could stop that. I could stop with that. Today, I know without a doubt, I can never stop with one. Never. And I don't need to try it anymore. I have seen the physical allergy and the mental obsession within me very clear. I do not think there is any difference between me and an alcoholic. when it comes to food. I've seen it. I've seen like being on binges and just being a junkie. Like I was fiending for that food. I don't need to test it out anymore. And, you know, in step 1, it talks about if we have a lurking notion that someday, somehow we're going to be able to control this disease, like we're probably going to eat again. And today there is no lurking notion for me. Without a doubt, I know I've accepted who I am and what I am. And you know what? I am powerless over food and my life is unmanageable. And there's nothing more clear to me than that today. I fought that stuff a long time. Like, how can you be powerless? Come on. But you know what? My disease was taken to a place where I got to see right in front of my eyes that, yeah, I'm totally powerless. Totally powerless. You know, and then I need God in my life, like step 2, you know, and step 3. I need to turn my thinking and my actions over to God. Fire Brandee, hire God. That is how I roll today. Brandee's best thinking doesn't work, you know, and if I'm ever questioning it, I guess I could go try again, but I don't question it anymore. And that's the cool thing. That's the really cool thing about what's changed in my story is that, and I want to be part of this herd now, where all those years I was so embarrassed. Nobody knew I was in OA. Like it was my best kept secret. Like my husbands didn't even know. I've been married twice because I'm real good at relationships too. But you know, they didn't even know what I was doing because I was embarrassed. I was like I had so much shame. And today I don't need to be shamed. There's no need for that. You know, I put the bat down. I don't need to beat myself up. This is beyond my control. You know, when I know better, I can do better. I didn't know in that time. And then God showed me. And now I can't be dishonest about what it is. And, you know, and then we do the inventories and stuff, and those show us how we've showed up in life. And sometimes they're not pretty. But again, they're not to beat ourselves up. They're just to give me the facts on what it looks like for character defects for me. Then I take those facts through 6 and 7. And then I do my amends. Then I do to live in 10, 11, and 12 every day. Every day. It's just that easy. It's really not that easy. But I would say, you know, if you're struggling or you're new, get in the center of the herd. Don't do what I did for 26 years because it's just going to get worse. You know, the big book has all the answers we need. I'm going to leave you with this is I always think of the big book as a recipe of recovery. So we're all familiar with recipes. If we don't follow the directions, typically the stuff's not going to turn out. For me, I've learned to follow the precise directions in the big book. That's my recipe for living, and it works. As long as we're not adding things, taking them away, making it more complicated than it needs to be, just the simple rules within that book. That's what I need to follow. And I'll continue to be neutral with food. I don't think about food. I don't care about food. I just eat my meals and that's it, which is amazing because I live my life either on a diet, planning a diet, or thinking about food. So with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brandee. And I will stop the recording now.